Local 22 News starts now with your forecast first.
Hey, good evening, everybody. We made it to Friday, and more importantly, we made it to Friday night. This has been a week of weather to remember, and it's been a season of weather to remember, and today's just really the most recent day of it. Leftover precipitation continues to move away. We may have a couple of snow flurries around for the next few hours, but most of them are coming to an end. But as temperatures fall, any liquid left over from the rain earlier may actually freeze up. We've already heard numerous reports of some icy spots on roads, so just be careful of that as you're traveling around through tomorrow morning. Then the weather improves through tomorrow afternoon. Dig the sunglasses out. Yeah, you needed them yesterday, but you're going to need them for a few days in a row here through the middle of next week. We'll talk about it all now on Local 22 News at 11.
From WVNY, this is Local 22 News at 11.
Good evening, and thanks for wrapping up the work week with us. I'm Mike Hoey.
And I'm Lauren Maloney. First on Local 22 News, 5 people killed this afternoon in a mass shooting in Aurora, Illinois.
Yeah, police are now confirming that the suspected shooter is also dead. They say 5 officers were wounded as the shooter fired at them. All of this happened at a manufacturing business where officials believe the shooter worked. More people were hurt as well, but an official count of them has still not been released tonight. Nearby schools locked down to make it easier for law enforcement to get control of the situation.
And we still don't know what caused an apartment fire this morning at a high-rise senior apartment living complex in Plattsburgh. Police say an automatic alarm went off just after 7 at Beekman Towers. Once inside, firefighters found 71-year-old Isabel Labarge injured. Her apartment was on the first floor there. She was taken to CVPH, where she later died.
So the apartment has significant damage due to the fire. There were 3 other residents on the first floor that were transported for smoke inhalation.
Now in a statement, Mayor Colin Reed said, quote, "I am grateful the 3-minute arrival time by our first responders at the high-rise complex ensured this tragedy didn't become even worse."
Looking around the region, 4 girls and their father have died after a Valentine's Day fire in Watertown, New York. 4-year-old Skylar Boda died in the home early yesterday morning. Her 4 sisters and their father, 38-year-old Aaron Boda, were all taken to a hospital. He and 8-year-old Alexa Boda died later in the day. 14-year-old Marissa Boda and 6-year-old Aaron Boda died this morning. The 5th daughter, 13-year-old Haley Boda, is reported to be in good condition tonight. A vigil was held this evening that a young boy who went to class with one of the girls helped plan.
She was in my class. She was a great student.
You gotta talk louder, dude.
She was a great student. She was great on math.
He just wanted everybody to go, and I said, oh, okay. I was like, everybody in Watertown? He's like, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Investigators found several pans on the kitchen stove, and they think that the fire may have started there. The city fire chief says the 2 smoke detectors in the house did not have batteries in them, and he also called it the worst fire the region has seen in decades.
A North Country lawmaker says the governor's proposal to close up to 3 prisons this year is cause for major concern. Governor Andrew Cuomo made the announcement today, citing what he calls record declines in incarceration rates. Now, we don't know which ones could be affected yet. A corrections team will work on that, with the closure slated for September 1st. Now, Cuomo has already closed 24 prisons and juvenile detention centers as governor. That includes Chattagate Correctional, which closed in 2014. Now, 100 jobs were affected. Assemblyman Billy Jones, a former CO himself, doesn't want to repeat. Today he said, quote, "The North Country has been in this position several times before, and we shouldn't have to go through it yet again. Closing prisons leaves communities with massive structures that are nearly impossible to repurpose or sell for redevelopment. I'll fight tooth and nail to ensure this does not impact the facilities within my district."
Back to Vermont now, as VTrans is moving about 300 of its employees from Montpelier to Barrie. And that move comes after their offices caught fire last June. Officials say the fire gave the state a chance to reevaluate how they were using office space. So the state has signed a 15-year lease for new VTrans offices on North Main Street in Barrie, which will save nearly $400,000 a year in rent. VTrans is now working on moving everyone into those new offices.
Vermont gas customers could soon see a break in their bills, the company requesting a 2.7% decrease. Now, it still needs to be approved by regulators, but if so, the new rates could go into effect in November. It would be the second rate decrease in 2 years. The company cites declining natural gas costs as the main motivation for the change.
Around the nation tonight, quote, "I didn't need to do this." That's just one of the things that President Trump is saying about his state of emergency declaration for the southern border. The president says this step is going to allow him to spend $8 billion to build a border wall, nearly 6 times more money than Congress approved yesterday in the spending bill to head off another partial government shutdown. Much of the additional money would be redirected to the wall from other projects in the Defense Department.
I could do the wall over a longer period of time. I didn't need to do this, but I'd rather do it much faster. And I don't have to do it for the election. I've already done a lot of wall for the election, 2020.
Democrats have vowed to fight the president on this. Under the National Emergencies Act, Congress can take up what's called a joint resolution of termination, but both the House and Senate would need to approve it with a 2/3 majority to override a presidential veto.
That decision sparking outrage from your representatives in Washington, really across the board. Local 22's Stacey De Silva has more on why they think it's a bad move.
Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy spent the last few weeks making deals across the aisle to keep the government open.
This is what a compromise looks like.
The $333 billion spending deal he worked on passed with a veto-proof majority in both the House and Senate. It included less than $2 billion for border fencing, a far cry from what President Trump wants.
We rejected the toxic and hate-filled immigration policies of President Trump. Our agreement does not force taxpayers to fund President Trump's wasteful wall.
I'm going to be signing a national emergency.
Today, the president took action to get his border wall built.
We're talking about an invasion of our country.
President Trump admitting it's likely to be tested in court.
Hopefully we'll get a fair shake and we'll win in the Supreme Court.
University of Vermont Law Associate Professor Lisa Holmes says it's what happens next that could determine constitutionality.
If the president diverts money that Congress entailed to other entities, that could, in fact, be unconstitutional.
The legality question is what has Republican New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik concerned, telling me in a statement, quote, "I believe that declaring a national emergency is the wrong decision and will be challenged in the courts." New Hampshire Senator Maggie Hassan also questions whether the declaration is legal. She tweeted, quote, "Not only is POTUS declaring a constitutionally dubious state of emergency to fulfill a campaign slogan, he's even trying to take federal dollars from drug interdiction efforts to do it. This is unconscionable and completely backward." New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is running for president, says the declaration sets an example for future presidents.
I have grave concerns that he's creating a precedent for the executive branch to declare states of emergency for non-emergency situations.
Stacey De Silva, Local 22 News.
Senator Bernie Sanders wrote on Twitter today the president cannot build the wall without congressional approval. Congressman Peter Welch said in a statement the wall will not be built.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear a case this spring involving next year's census. The Trump administration wants to add a question about citizenship to it. A lower court ruled that adding the question would be illegal, citing several different reasons for that. The Supreme Court is going to take the case in April. The deadline to print the census questionnaires for next year is coming up at the end of June. Well, at Local 22 News, we are your local election headquarters, and President Trump is no longer alone tonight on the Republican side of the 2020 race. Former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld says he's considering making a run. He was governor of the Bay State for most of the 1990s, and he was also the Libertarian Party nominee for vice president in 2016.
Because of the many concerns I've talked about today, I have established an exploratory committee to pursue the possibility of my running for the presidency of the United States as a Republican in the 2020 election.
But Weld acknowledges that defeating an incumbent president from his own party is going to be an uphill battle. CNN has President Trump's most recent approval rating among Republicans at 89%.
Weld wasn't the only potential presidential candidate in New Hampshire today. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York was in Concord. She took part in a walking tour, visited businesses in Dover, and met members of the LGBTQ community in Somersworth. Gillibrand announced her candidacy on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert last month.
Well, part of it is an effort to encourage kids to put down phones and other electronic gadgets and pick up a sled.
Why not? Or skates.
Yeah.
What you can find at the 16th annual Rutland Winterfest.
Plus, a lot of the precipitation from earlier today is gone. Notice I say precipitation instead of just either rain or snow, because we had both, and even some light freezing rain. But right now the roads are mainly clear, but it looks like there could be a little bit of a light glaze on parts of 89. We'll talk about that, the weekend, sunshine. Your forecast is in a few minutes.
You're watching local news that matters with Lauren Maloney, Mike Hoey, Sky Tracker Chief Meteorologist Sean Parker, and the Local 22 sports team. This is Local 22 News at 11.